Well, here we are again. My name is David Schwimmer. This is Courtney Cox, Jennifer Aniston, and Matthew Perry here on the end. Welcome to another episode of Friends. No, don't adjust your TV set. My name's C.F. Roberts, and this is Fury, Shannon X. Kane, Jet Black. And, well, we're doing the roundtable thing again. And much of the reason that we're pretty much forced to do it is this little controversy that's come up over the last month or so. And I use the term controversy loosely because it's more of a manufactured controversy than anything else, but since we're in the hot seat again, well, time to fight back. Comments?
Yay, Tempest, teapot.
Yeah, ongoing thing, always a detractor. It's sometimes it seems like there's more than just people that object to our work, that want other intentions, other purposes,
Agendas even.
Agendas, and I think that's probably that doesn't just affect us, but potentially affects everyone in the community because cable access is their station, and we are people that just go down there and use it, and so you lose the cat. The average working person on the street that has no voice loses their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Biblical precedent, Philistines.
And we're going to talk a lot about precedents today and talk about a few other things as well. But the guy who's rolling the ball behind this latest round of, like I said, manufactured controversy is a guy who, ironically, used to be a cat board president, was a member of the cat board for many years. And the story behind this is all rather interesting because he has made an official complaint to the cat, and it has since gone from the cat to the cat board and the telecom board. And so we're going to see some interesting fireworks in the near future, probably even before this thing airs.
I had a question, by the way. Is Bob's complaint the official complaint referenced in Harden's article? I was confused on that.
I believe it is.
Teamwork, go team.
And we'll be getting to a lot of that soon. We'll be getting to a lot of that momentarily, and we've got.
Well, one of the things.
There are two topics that we're covering, and they are interrelated, and so basically those
very
two
interrelated.
Okay, one of the things that I think is important to realize here is that we've devoted an awful lot of airtime recently to addressing our detractors. And that's the least we can do. If somebody comes out and makes a complaint against us, yes, we'll probably respond. But what's being ignored completely is the number of people who view our work favorably.
Yes.
As opposed to the lone nut detractors. And, or you have people that aren't such lone nuts. In fact, there's so many correlations between complaining factors that sometimes you could almost label it conspiracy of sorts. Except conspiracy is too grand a word because this is all happening in a very small arena. And people, you've heard of the syndrome, a big frog in a small pond. Right? Well, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who want to be the boss man, and they want to be on top, and they want to control the artistic output of the community. And one of the ways they can do that is to complain about letting just anybody come and use the facilities of cable access instead of people who belong to the country club or who belong to their organization or belong to their cause. And that's part of what we're addressing here. We want
their businesses.
Yes, and we want to attain we're about retaining the right of you or any citizen of this area to come in and use cable access television and all its facilities to whatever ends you please.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody complains a bit when local churches get on community access and promote their ways of life, their agendas and their ends, and
Which are often offensive to us.
I don't complain about those, and
One thing,
people do complain when we get on there and promote our way of life, and I wouldn't even call us so bold as to promote an agenda unless it's just to get people to think, but that's scary and dangerous, isn't it? Churches, at least they're trying to get people not to think anything but what they're told.
Right, or, if it's any other sort of commercial entertainment, they're trying to sell something, whether it's friends or whatever, a lifestyle, clothes,
Advertainment wasn't it?
entertainment, that's the majority of what you get on commercial TV. But you get people like us that just go down there and we do what we do and make the sort of entertainment that we think is funny. And it's entertainment. It's entertainment for entertainment's value, not to make a buck. And that's offensive to a lot of people that basically think that should be the only kind of free speech that there is.
And
that makes a buck.
I would agree with you and add to what you say there as well, that not only is it entertainment for entertainment's value, but I think something that's found very offensive by a lot of the detractors is that it's entertainment with value, and with a message and with content that addresses real issues that actually have validity for the common working class person that they struggle with and deal with and are oppressed by in their daily life. And this, I think, is very upsetting and worrisome to a lot of the more, you might say middle class or upper class detractors out there. And it disappoints me a lot to see a good show that makes what I consider to be art, and several good producers who make, what I, a member of the working class, find to be good entertainment, good art, and, and good topical coverage of current issues, to have to take so much time out of making art to answer their detractors. It's like, what a waste of time.
we should be taping an episode of Abbey the Lemur.
Right now.
That's right,
We
or
should
doing
be
something
doing
to upset them.
Something, more interesting than this.
We should be having oil wrestling at a party right now, and you guys should be taping it.
But actually,
Our should have their own show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they have to come down and do this sort of BS,
Actually,
but one thing I'd like
work for something you're not getting paid for. Here's a concept.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to point out is, we were just talking about the church programs or whatever right-wing Republican. We've seen some serious right-wing gobbledygook on the air.
Yeah.
And you will not find a record of any of us ever having filed a formal complaint. We do not lodge complaints. We don't go crying to the city council, and we feel free to make rebuttals to all of these things in our own shows, but we don't, we haven't filed anything with the city, we haven't filed anything with the CAT, because we would rather be making art than addressing, these things. And
We're doing this because we believe in free speech instead of trying to oppress it, like people that basically go to the city council and go whining down there.
And I don't care who makes a church program, despite, I'm a Southern Christian, but the way the traditional fundamentalist viewpoint and some of the things that are espoused by the average church member, I do find distasteful and offensive. I think it's an insult to Christianity. But have I lodged a formal complaint? No, I haven't. I let them preach their sermon, and by God, when it's my turn to preach mine, they better let me.
Well, I think what you're saying is extremely valid. I've seen a lot of local church programs on and a lot of, what most people think of as community values-oriented programs on that, make personal attack and insult on various aspects of my lifestyle and that of my friends, just in generality, and they preach this gospel of hatred that, is very much against the true spirit of the Christianity that Christianity's prophet, Jesus, actually had to say. And there's a lot that I would have to say about that, but should I feel compelled to say it, I believe, as Lemurs, and other video producers I know seem to believe, that the forum and arena in which to do that is in the same context that the original challenge was issued. It would be a different matter if it was, oh, I don't know, say a privately owned newspaper, wherein,
right around the point.
right, wherein your opposition could not, be assured of getting to disagree with you publicly and getting equal airtime or page space with you. But at community access, anyone can have an equal amount of airtime or page space or anything as long as they're willing to put forth the personal effort to do it. And so therefore, in a forum like that, I don't think that any complaints about content or subject matter of a program belong outside of a Take 5 or one's own produced program.
Well,
And an answer and a rebuttal to that.
right. Another thing I would like to say is, to give a quick thanks to the Times for having printed the rebuttals that they did.
Yeah, that's
And in all fairness,
You have to.
thanks for that. And but we'd like to take that rebuttal just a few steps further, and that's why we're all sitting here.
Among other reasons. But I want to rope this in now, and speaking of crying to city council, let's talk about crying to city council. Okay, I've been a producer at CAT for about 7 years now. Is 7? Well, yeah, probably almost 7 now.
almost a
And
decade.
you've taught classes up there too, haven't you?
Taught classes.
And sat on city council meetings and helped out on both ends as capacities.
Sat on committee meetings.
Well, not just sat and participated.
Done volunteer work, helped out on other people's shows. I'd say that goes actually for everybody here, in some aspects.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the people that have been involved in the CAT board and whatnot, back when I first started, I kind of looked up to them as kind of like elder statesmen of the station, people who carried the torch and whatnot. And one guy I've had decreasing amounts of respect for over the years is Bob Emengger, who is a former CAT board president, and just I don't know when exactly he seemed to kind of go the other way or whatever, but I just became aware a couple of years ago of just increasingly snide comments on his part. Back in the day, the CAT board would kind of get behind us and kind of examine our stuff when controversies emerged, and for the most part they kind of say, yeah, well, there's nothing we can do about this content, sorry. Just little snide comments started popping up, and I'm not going to dwell on them too much, but it turns out that Bob was actually the guy who complained. Now, the complaint was rather strange, and it kind of came about in an odd way. And in a nutshell, kind of bringing this whole story back to square one, back about a month ago, we did this live gig. And I think we had a VIPA meeting before the live gig and whatnot. And it was pretty well known that we did the live gig. We were talking about it at the VIPA meeting. And, seems that Bob stayed up past his bedtime and made a point of catching it.
He might have taped it.
He might have, but,
I don't know, the text of his complaining email was so incoherent, it sounded like sleep deprivation to me.
Yeah. Well, anyway, as far as the official complaint goes, it was almost 2 weeks after the live show before it was actually put out. And the funny thing is, and this is about a matter of public knowledge now because we all knew it, that he was up rattling his saber at City Hall probably close to 2 weeks before he actually made the complaint, right after that. Which, okay, we've talked about the protocol of complaints, and basically you're not supposed to go bug city council or City Hall or the city supervisor or any of these folks about what you've seen on the CAT.
What is the chain of command?
The chain of command, okay, the protocol for complaints, and we've gone over this before, I'm going to go over it again, is first you complain in writing to the cat board, or no, it's not to the cat board, to cat management. And if you're not satisfied with the response you get there, you go on to the telecom, or you go on to the cat board and then the telecom board. And if you're not satisfied at that point, it pretty much goes on to the courts.
Does it ever go to the city council?
I think, well, unfortunately it has at some points, but...
Is it
I mean,
supposed to
legitimately.
be, you know?
No, it's not supposed to. I mean, these bodies exist so the city council doesn't have to waste their time on
And
stuff like
Nicholas
this.
Chuck, oh, wise beefalo, what authority does city council have to arbitrate content of any given program on community access?
None,
The
really.
same as the United States government,
Yeah.
0.
Focus production,
Yeah.
that's us.
Lucas. Anyway. But he pretty much got city council in an uproar, I guess, or got a few members up there in an uproar, and people at City Hall were actually calling to the station demanding a copy of the tape. They all wanted to see it. And so at
Did they
first,
want to see it?
apparently,
Okay.
I hope they enjoyed it.
you know,
Okay.
We
well,
had as much fun viewing it as we had making it.
well, there seems to be kind of a split thing. There seems to be kind of a half and half thing. There are like two going opinions up at City Hall about it. And there was a lot of argument, a lot of hubbub, and Kit Williams, the city attorney, I guess, had the foresight to say, hey, there's nothing illegal about what goes on. There's nothing illegal about what happened on this show, you know, I mean,
What it
it's
seemed
not-
to boil down to for me was slingshot, hornet's nest, smack. Oh, wow, that's entertaining.
but you know, it's pretty much went as far as say it's not obscene, there's nothing we can do. But then, and only then, I guess, did this official complaint come out, and...
Okay. Can I interject?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. You said that it's not obscene. Now would be a good time to, I think, to mention basically, what are the 3 circumstances, Chuck, in which free speech is illegal?
Are you gonna go to blackboard?
We said, should I do?
This will be on the test, guys.
Yeah.
Actually, that's part of the context of
Okay,
this.
I'm just.
But,
Stay tuned.
so,
Hold on, we're making that
a
sandwich.
copy of the complaint was floated past me, and which, you know, of course, why should I not know about this?
It's about you.
But, anyway,
You
so,
troublemaker.
yeah, so some concerned folks gave this to me, and let me peruse it, let
Well,
me
that
know
kind of
this
goes
is
back to the
happening.
whole having an audience that actually does like and enjoy Abbey of Lemur and other similar shows, because otherwise, why would anyone go out of their way to bring you a copy of a complaint against you so you can answer it?
Yeah.
You know, somebody cares.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, as such, this was the official complaint. I'm led to believe, this is the original official complaint. I'm led to believe, I guess that there has been a revised complaint that I'm not familiar with, but I'm going to read it to you verbatim. Anyway. Citizens complain over program aired on Channel 8, Sunday morning, 5/18/03, The Lemur Show. I, representing myself and other local citizens, names on request, found this program, and I want you to, one thing I gotta tell you about is, one of my little hobbies is pretty much being a semanticist, and I like to read into the language of everything. Found this program offensive, lewd, tasteless, and objectionable when applying contemporary local community standards, finding the work, taken as a whole, appealing to prurient interest. The work presented was done in a patently offensive sexual way. The program lacked serious literary, artistic, or political value. The language and acts when applying contemporary local standards was offensive, including the pantomiming of anal penetration. do you consider this show acceptable material for the community, and why should the city underwrite a station that is not sensitive to local community standards?
Sounds like somebody was using the paste and cut tool on the
Yeah.
internet from like federal law to.
Yeah,
To
badly.
take things out of context.
Yeah, badly. I mean, yeah, we've got an FAQ and we know how to use it selectively. But
Well, first of all, hi, I'm contemporary locally, and yes, I live in the community, and it's well within my standards, and
If
46
it
people.
were outside of our standards, we wouldn't have made the blue thing.
well, this is going to go into a big rant about the community, which we've gone on before, and unfortunately we're going to have to go into it again. But let me break this down.
Never learned.
Okay, now as far as laws proving something obscene, what he invokes here are the legal guidelines set down by Miller versus California to prove obscenity. And what he does here is that using local community standards, finding that the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest.
anybody got a dictionary on prurient?
Well, I can tell you that show wasn't it, or if you did find that broadcast it to be a prurient interest, please call a doctor.
Dictionary, basically, I mean, I've looked it up, and basically what it means is just like appealing to strictly sexual interest of the viewer.
But what's wrong with that?
It gives you a happy and there's no other purpose to it, you know.
And
Basically, it's, yeah, right. It's sexually arousing and that's it. That's all
But
there is
again,
to it.
if you found that particular broadcast sexually arousing, I would recommend psychiatric help.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
it's
you know, and the Kirk would be arousing the anime fans.
right. I mean, you know, there may have been sexually arousing things on it to some people, but I mean, some people are sexually aroused by Blender commercials.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
mean,
And
you know,
shoe commercials.
so I mean, if that in itself
And
is,
children's
I mean,
Wonder Bread commercials.
right. You better go rip the whole underwear section out of every Sears magazine
Yeah.
because,
And the shoe section.
right, because, you know, I mean, somebody finds that sexually arousing.
And the umbrella
Yeah.
raincoat section.
Well, even all
And the
that,
power tools section.
even all that to me is beside the point because it states that the program as a whole appealed to the prurient interest, which is to say, the show is done with no specific intent other than to arouse people. And, you know, like, you know, if you were aroused by it, use, you know, get therapy. But besides that, I mean, first of all, I think there was a lot more going on there besides something that might have been construed as arousing, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, the top films had like stuff that was shocking and arousing in it. The question is extent. And
Right,
yeah,
I mean,
I
maybe
mean, the question is extent. Greek drama,
Yeah.
Shakespeare, you
Well,
know.
you have also, you know, before, you know, he cites the, you know, the pantomime anal penetration. Yeah, I'm the person who did that.
And I'm the person
And
who's
he's the
done it.
person who received it. Now, if anybody had watched that show and paid attention, they would have noted that I made extensive commentary before doing that as to why I was doing it. It was a performance art piece,
And it was satirical.
it was satirical, and it was just plain goofy and fun. And that's another thing, you know.
And it ties in very strongly to what we're talking about here. May
For
I add?
arousal of help, for having fun.
Well, and if I can interject something really quick here, it leads me to believe one of two things must be true. One, the people watching that who are complaining do not have the capacity to understand what we were doing there, which is sad, or they have another agenda.
Yeah, or it says to
I
me,
vote for B.
Because,
but it says to me
All in
also
favor of B?
that it hit too close to home.
yes, it did, I mean.
Because it was all about them, you know, it's like,
Explain it.
when I mean, I remember when that South Park movie came out, and I thought it was really funny first, I really enjoyed it. I noticed that the people most leading the charge against it and saying, this is worthless filth, this is disgusting, you know, this should be banned,
The movie was about people like that. These people,
They were mocking them in the movie.
either they didn't see that because it's hit too close to home, or it hit so close to home that it really caught.
Right, either they didn't have the self-awareness to realize they were being mocked, or they realized that they were being mocked, but it seems so stupid to be like, don't mock me, you bad satirist, you made me mad because you mocked me, and you were so right. I mean, if someone weighs 92 pounds, there's no point teasing them for being fat, They won't even be bothered. They'll laugh it off and shrug and say, okay, that obviously is ridiculous and it doesn't apply to me, but if it hits a little too close to home, and, so obviously, as far as a field of prurient interest, that means that you must have been watching it with a mute button on, as far as I'm concerned, because all through it, both Shannon and Chuck and surrounding cast and crew were ranting about exactly what this simulated act of anal penetration was a visual metaphor for in a cultural context.
Which we should explain.
Well, we'll get on to that.
Shannon was going to talk when I was a bit.
Well, I was just going to say, as part of the South Park thing, one of the major boys was leading the outcry against it was Bill O'Reilly.
Oh.
And somebody came on his show and actually said, Bill, don't you get it? It's about people like you. And he just sat there mumbling. I had a sour look on his face.
This email seems like the written equivalent of sitting there mumbling to me.
Well, and so somebody cheesed off that horrible little leprechaun. And bullied for them. But anyway.
All right. But anyway, so we'll go into, okay, so prurient interest, point 1. Point 2, in the Miller versus California test is the work presented was done in a patently offensive sexual way, which, as far as being patently, well, again, the context is the problem here. Chances are there were folks who could have found that show offensive, and we are probably guilty of offending lots of people and whatever. And patently offensive sexual, well, there was sexual stuff in there, but it by no means was the entire context.
So I'm patently offended by the mere existence of Barbie and Rice Krispies, but there's not a damn thing we can do about it.
Yeah.
Well, sure, and you also have, people are forgetting when they talk about sexual content, they're forgetting the whole side of sexual humor. And one can use humor, or one can use sexuality as a mechanism for humor and satire.
Makes it universal.
Go right back to Friends on that one.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the fact that you have to explain that is, I mean, everybody should get that.
What America did these people grow up in?
I was going to say, it's like they've never heard of Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy, or they've never heard of Lenny Bruce, or they've never watched an episode of Friends
Carlin, or
and I mean, once again,
or a soap opera, or even sitcom television.
Yeah, it's just
What do they watch?
Which I mean, the only thing that I can think of is, once again, I don't think that anyone could be that stupid.
No.
I mean, so I mean, there has to be something
Well,
else.
that leads us to answer B, agenda.
Agenda.
All in favor of agenda?
Right.
Agenda and a whole lot else, but okay, the third, those two are the big community standards points. The third prong in the Miller versus California obscenity test is that it basically involves slaps values, and that's not a local community thing, it's a national, across the board national thing.
Explain slaps to the non-video people, if you would.
Slaps, that is, and he writes about it here, that in order to be proven obscene, a piece of art has to exhibit a complete lack of serious literary, artistic, or political or scientific value. That's
Serious?
slaps. It's an anagram. Anagram?
Yes, scientific.
Serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Or is
Should
it
that be an acronym?
That's an
It's an
acronym. Sorry.
And sure enough, you guys are covered under each one of those 5 on your show.
If there wasn't, sorry, but there was plenty of political commentary on that show.
Yeah, now he says here in his complaint, the program lacked serious literary, artistic, or political value.
Now, as a matter of fact, let's go over the live show, and his judgment of the slap's values are poor at best. The show did have socio-political polemic running throughout. The pantomime of anal penetration was preceded by a preamble that made it obvious that it was a piece of social satire, aimed directly at people like the kind of person who's complaining here. The Parade of Virtues was a blatant piece of social satire. The pre-recorded segment was a well-edited montage of vivid and sometimes disconcerting imagery mixed with an audio montage of fringe ranting, conspiracy theory, and kook sermons. Therefore, it had artistic value. Who else is bringing that kind of mentality to the fore? Pointing out that the callers, whether Emengger or any of his phantom cohorts, wish to embrace their ilk or not, are members of the community, is also an act of social value. You might not like it, but all those people calling in and yammering with us, they live in this town. They were members of this community.
And they're going to go to high school with your daughter.
And they never mentioned it.
No,
Or they never mentioned
They never mention it. They never do.
They never mentioned the 46 people that called and supported or participated in it. And I mean, some people heckle, but guess what? That's part of every comedy show you will ever see, is basically the person who calls and heckles the comedian, and the comedian snaps back on them.
Right, audience heckling is an established
That is
part of
called
the genre.
audience
And
participation.
look at how few people actually heckled anyway.
Well, they
Even
want to
though we
criticize the
opened
community.
we opened ourselves up for it quite nicely.
Yeah, well,
You bent
regardless.
over and handed them a rubber glove, but
Yeah.
they still wouldn't do it for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, the point is, we set up the forum, they came in and played by our rules, which, you know, there weren't many rules, but they basically,
But they
they
understood
played
it.
our game.
Yeah, they understood it exactly, which is to say that we are not basically doing something unprecedented and patently offensive, because if people can step in and play that, it means they do it every day, and we are basically representing part of the culture
Which
that
is
they can
just,
partake in
yeah.
that easily.
it's exactly to say what Jet just said, that they are obviously members of, you know, each other's community here, if they can recognize each other's shared values, as you said.
Well, and another
Like that.
thing, I think it is important to point out that these people didn't hammer on the fact that they're components of the community, because the only people that seem to do that is,
Me.
this offends my community standards, you know, is usually from people who have to invoke that. They're saying, you know, we, the people who can't handle it, are so outraged. We're members of the community, and by trumpeting that around the way that they do, the way they use it, is to exclude all others from membership in the community.
It sounds
Yeah.
good, doesn't it? Community, because it's such an ambiguous term. It
Yeah,
can
well, we're
mean the whole city as a whole, and
it
it's
never
taken
does.
that way.
I'm a soccer mom. I'm part of the community. Me and my little neighbors in this little bitty subdivision here, and don't mess with us because we're the community, and nobody else is.
And we should arbitrate and have authority over everyone else, especially the people in the factories who are making our baby wipes and wheels for our cars.
Well, exactly, and it's, you know, people who usually use that sort of language, I hear it from big churches. I hear it from people in government. I hear it from people that basically have business organizations, and they say that we are the community. What I think they mean is we are running the community.
The upper class.
We are the upper class, we are running the community, and basically, people who do contrary than what we're trying to establish by business organizations, by churches, big churches, and governments, are not part of the community. They are opposing us and opposing what our value system, and therefore they are not part of the community because we create what we perceive the community ought to be.
Usually when people trumpet the word community, it's very selective. You know, there aren't a lot of people. Just no one thinks in terms of the entire community as a whole. They think of
They think of
our little section.
a gated community, an intellectually gated community.
Oh, look, I have no opinions of my own, and and I'm also terrified that someone might personally attack me if I personally attack them, so I'll hide behind my community. And I would have so much more respect, you know, for someone who stood up and said, you know, my community is actually okay with this, but I completely hate this stuff that you're doing, and I think it really sucks. Would you get it off the air?
I think on that, in that respect, I think, you know, our good old thorn in the side, Sergeant Kovac, was much more honest.
Well, yeah.
At least he said, I hate this and stuff.
That's right. Well, right, you know, people can build gates around their community and keep basically all the poor white trash working class.
I'm coming in over the
or,
walls.
you know, not necessarily just white trash, I mean,
I have a date with
basically
your
it's
daughter.
everyone. But, you know, they can't block it on the TV. You know, they can't keep us out, you know, it's like,
They can't block it in the
completely
underground
avoid,
seats.
No.
They
you
can't
know,
keep
our
it off
type
the
of
outdoor
culture.
walls.
But basically, when we start making our own culture, our own entertainment, it's a real problem, because, you know, we have busted down the gates of the community.
Well, when you read between the
We're not part of
lines,
your community.
And your kids are listening to our music.
when you read between the lines, and it's just like, I don't, and there's more stuff to go on here. Well, I'm not gonna dwell on the alleged lack of SLAP's values. Where was I? What were we talking about a second
The
ago?
definition of SLAP's values and
Yeah.
how the show actually had all of them.
Well, okay.
Community standards, et cetera.
Community
Community
standards.
standards, and also, like, I think it'd be important to actually explain the whole sort of, you know, for those who didn't see it, you know, what the point of that was. Because, I mean, it's really the simulated anal penetration
Oh, well-
with a preamble to it, because I
Well,
think...
basically, what was it? It was a goof on community standards. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Well, we had talked about how we felt when we had, see, this isn't the first roundtable show. In fact, I know a viewer in Farmington who actually insinuated to me that he's getting tired enough of these rebuttals that he's almost rooting for the other side by now. And, you know,
wasn't
it's kind
the
of like,
last roundtable also preceded by a live show? Now that I think about it,
you know, but we have to keep, well, we did another one.
That's right.
But anyway, so we've talked about, you know, we do address our detractors, but sometimes the detractors keep hammering on the same point, and it's this whole thing over and over and over again, ad nauseum. So, we said, you know, sometimes we just get so tired of explaining ourselves endlessly,
again and
and it
again.
feels like we're getting, read my lips, okay, and
Like it's about time to just write the standard response
Right.
form up and mail it out. Just write an FAQ page on the website.
Fist fondled, okay, you know what I'm saying here, and so anyway.
Fist simulated anal penetrated.
You know, and so anyway, we decided to show exactly how we felt about the situation by pantomiming said act while playing in the background Joan Philip Sousa's Stars and Stripes Forever and hoisting an American flag. And some things happened after that. If anything was potentially, I mean, it was so comedic. I mean, you know, it was so unprurient, okay?
Well, the way the scene fell apart, in my opinion, and it was beautiful. I loved it. It was almost like the best reaction to like the faux patriotism movement I could possibly think of. Community standards and faux patriotism, two things that kind of always do get under my
Right,
skin.
Nazism under the name and flag of patriotism.
Right, because we ended up, after doing that,
Oh, you don't have to go into it.
yeah, well, we launched into a bit of what we like to call spontaneous vaudeville.
Yeah, freestyle ad-lib vaudeville.
And so anyway, I thought it was funny, but maybe.
Actually, I thought it was one of the funniest things we've ever
And
done.
maybe our detractors didn't, and that's certainly their choice.
Well, I have a thought that basically what that represents, and I think that like so many people can identify to it, is that basically someone in power is basically giving it to them. And then, you know, I think so often, you know, somebody has to take that sort of guff off of their boss, and they feel like they've just been raped. And then they have to turn around and smile and say thank you, and lick that, you know, and lick the fist.
The hand.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Right, exactly. And I mean, you know,
Lisa, may
if
I
you're
have
working
some
class,
more?
you're the average person, you take it from the government, you take it from your boss,
The
you
IRS.
take it from the IRS, you take it from everyone. So I mean, you know, to us, you can cry about it, or you can make it funny, you can make it a joke, you can make it entertainment.
And that's what we said, yeah.
And no one from the working class, no
Yeah, right.
one from basically the average person has ever complained about it. And the only thing I can figure out is the sort of people who are in power, who basically use these sort of tactics and enjoy these sort of tactics, basically are offended because someone has actually called BS on them.
Called their bluff on what
Called their
they're
bluff and
doing.
said, you know, this is what you're doing.
And if they're shocked, it's because they have no personal referential experience to which they can relate. And maybe they ought to come and try, you know, I don't know, working in a dog kennel for a month.
Good
Well,
point.
or, you know, the thing is,
Yeah, clean up some dog action with that.
well, or the thing is, if you have gone throughout your adult life thus far and have not felt like you were being raped in a work situation, or a tax situation, or a community situation, a church situation, a family situation, just insert situation here.
You have
If
been
you have
oppressed, you're
made,
the oppressor.
yeah, if you've made it this far and haven't felt a little worn out, and if
stressed
you
out.
haven't- if you have not been ideologically raped up to this point, well, hon, I'm not sure what planet you're living on, but it isn't this one.
Maybe you just have no ideals to rape if you haven't been ideologically raped yet.
Well, one point I
Or
would
they
make.
approve of the system.
Yeah, well, one
Or the
point
system
I,
was created for the benefit of you.
one line of thought I've had regarding this and pretty much the entire fallout from the manufactured conspiracy, is, oh boy, let me think, I just got bitten.
May I?
Is that bad? Anyway, just the point is, the kinds of folks who were issuing these complaints and whatnot and this kind of thing are the kinds of folks who, or the phantom group of people who are supposedly behind all this, are the kinds of folks who've never had to wait in line for anything. They've never had to,
Work,
you know,
sweat.
or, you know, just the easy class, the upper class, once again.
Leisure class.
But,
The easy
Yeah.
class, I like that. They've never had to
Yeah.
eviscerate an animal for a living. They've never had to lift heavy things all day long.
No, they go on hunting trips and their guide eviscerates the elk for them.
Right, I mean, they can take pleasure in basically knowing that someone has eviscerated lots of animals and they are collecting the profits for it.
but, okay, having gone over the three-pronged obscenity test, one thing I want to direct your attention to is that he utilizes these guidelines to prove obscenity. But in the context of this, he never actually comes out and uses the word obscene. As a matter of fact, he substitutes the word offensive for obscene. He said...
In rhetoric, that's called argument by implication. Nice technique, but faulty.
Well, also, I mean, a good point is, in that context, offensive has no real legal basis. And so the purpose of the standards has been distorted in the context of the complaint. And there are one or two ways you could go here. Either he doesn't understand these standards and how they are applied.
Yeah, he's hoping that his audience won't understand these standards and how he's applying them,
Yeah.
misapplying them.
Or, well, there's no audience.
Oh, really?
Except for the
Where did that
city
editorial come from
Well,
then?
it's not an editorial. It's, no, I'm reading a complaint.
No,
No,
I
but
mean,
I mean,
the later editorial in the Times.
yeah.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
anyway, and we're going to get into a few rounds about the so-called abuse of free speech, which I pretty much have a problem with the term abuse of free speech.
Is
But
there such a thing?
I don't believe there is, but
All in favor of no such
Hartman's
thing?
Hartman's editorial might be it. I think that anything that's a suppression of free speech, and if not, I mean, you know, or people encouraging others to suppress free speech is an abuse of free speech.
Yeah, using
because it
free
is contrary
speech
to the
to-
concept of basically everyone should speak out. When basically you're trying to like stop that, then you're using it to basically oppress it.
Yeah, using free speech to approve of censorship in the name of standards.
But this,
Speaking of,
Sig Heil there.
yeah.
fellow online editor.
Anyway, so he does this whole thing, and you know, the context of the complaint has been distorted, and knowing Bob's legendary impatience with wordsmithing, it's hard for me to imagine that he's playing fast and loose with the language, because I'm really grooving on his semantics, but I don't think he's about that. So, okay, you know, one or two things. Either he's playing fast and loose with the language, which I tend to doubt, or he's basically ignorant as far as how these laws are applied. But
Well,
for
the
several,
agenda.
well, I think there's an agenda there too, and the agenda comes out in several ways, and it comes out, we're going to get to the Harden article later, but it has to do with the fact that he was, and everyone knows, he was up there, you know, rattling his saber at City Hall close to 2 weeks before he made the complaint. And also, well,
Like he's trying to find an audience or something.
the fact that we have that we have this Harden editorial that alludes to the show, alludes to the complaint, but does manage in a really nice way to plug Friends for Fayetteville.
Yeah, here in the movie business, that's known as a teaser, or, you know, preview.
But doesn't mention the people that he's actually critiquing.
No.
How does that work?
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
and the third thing in here is he ends the complaint with a couple of very loaded questions. And those are, do you consider this show acceptable material for this community? And why should the city underwrite a station that is not sensitive to local community standards? Now, those are two very loaded questions, and what they say to me when I read between the lines is, these are trick questions. If you answer them wrong, well, X number of people are going to see these answers, and you better answer them right.
Well, it's in the wording of that. And
Yeah.
it's like so many people manipulate surveys in that same way, you know.
Yeah.
Are you for allowing starving innocent children in Africa to die?
Right,
Who's
after
going to say
being anally penetrated by, Somalian soldiers.
Right. I mean, who's going to say yes? But basically, if they're writing a survey, and their survey is to prove that, people should be sending funding over to Africa rather than basically funding in the United States, they're going to get their way. This question is worded exactly that same way.
See also bias, see also slant.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, okay, the
It's
question
also propaganda.
was, yes, is this show acceptable material for this community? And being a former CAT board president, he knows very well that it's not up to CAT to decide those things.
I think the community decided it. but
Yeah, look, oh.
No, we're not, George Bush took care of that.
So we're dealing with a person who, and probably a group of people who don't understand the concept of autonomy.
I think during the call-in show, the community made their thoughts on that pretty clear, actually.
Yeah, and of course, there's nothing here concerning the community. It's all about my little friends in the gated communities and the big nice houses. That's what these people mean when they say community. And the question isn't whether the show is acceptable for the community. The show is created and aired by members of the community. It doesn't meet the legal definitions of obscenity, and invocation of local community standards in this instance are specious at best. The callers, active participants in the program, were also part of the community. And while the complainant asks why the city should underwrite a station that is not sensitive to local community standards, and aren't you tired of hearing this phrase abused,
the question should be, why would a diverse community stand behind a quote-unquote public access station that would discriminate against certain factions of the community by denying them access?
Hey, look at this thing. Have you ever seen one of these before? I bet that our detractors have ones of these that cost more than this one and haven't been chewed on by rats. But it's called a remote control, and if you don't like what you see, I would like to give you a little educational tutorial. These numbered buttons here change channels to things like Friends and Will and Grace and Rush Limbaugh. I don't know, that TAOTL upset Falwell pretty bad. But I think they took the A one out. And Sesame Street and the Home Shopping Network and Fox and TBS. Yes, go. Engage in capitalism. It'll make you feel better.
You can go to Cinemax and see things worse than what we put on that log.
Skinemax, that is. Yes, yes. So if you would like some period interest, you could turn to Skinemax. You know, or Cartoon Network, but you'll see a lot more violence and hideous cruelty there than on the show, and talk about lack of content or value. Well, you know, or the all-commercial channel. But failing that, these buttons here operate what's known as a VCR. I bet you have a DVD player, and you could put in a movie that you rented, specifically picked out to appeal to exactly what, yeah, you know, Pleasantville. Oh wait, there's satire and social commentary in that. The Scooby-Doo movie is pretty good though, drug references, but you can fast forward past those. That's this button right here. Or I would like you to finally, as a last resort, note this big red button right here. You could turn it off, and you could leave your climate-controlled, air-conditioned, interior design house and go out onto your front porch into some actual air that hasn't been pre-filtered, and you could deal with real-life human beings, and you could walk down to the community access station, or drive down there in your SUV, but good luck finding parking, and then you could actually go so far as to do a take 5, Monday and Tuesday, or you could actually make your own production. Oh wait, that would involve work. Nope, never mind, sorry, false alarm.
Sorry, we alarmed you.
Yeah, didn't mean to alarm you. Sorry, Chuck. They continue.
That's okay. I'm basically about done deconstructing this entire complaint, and
Well, okay, but I mean,
I'll probably be doing so in other venues soon, probably even before this airs.
Like in the public streets while laughing and mocking.
but if the guy goes to the city council as if they actually have authority, like, I mean, you know, this is America, this is democracy, we're not all working for Walmart. You know, I mean, it's like basically working for a corporation. It's like, yes, I'll go to your boss. You said something that upset me, so I'll get you fired and written up. They'll be kicking you out of the United States, boy.
I think the Reagan years have caused this individual to, you know, going back to Star Wars, confuse the city council with the Imperial Council. And unfortunately, no Sith are going to come and strangle people using their telekinetic powers for saying things that bother the regime. Yeah, give George Bush another term and we'll see how that goes.
Right, the Red Scare is over.
No, it's not.
Anyways,
Yeah, it's just changed into
it's just
terrorists.
terrorists, right?
But
Keep correct.
I mean, I think I've deconstructed this about as much as I care to in this particular venue, but I don't know that there's a lot more to say. I mean, well, the complaint, given the way it's given, is basically this kind of paper tiger with, I don't know, just I don't know, this misuse of these legal standards, and you know, of course, the legal standards are not important. The whole thing, I guess, the loaded questions at the end kind of say a lot to me, and this, you know, this is not an actual complaint by an actual person who was offended by the program. To me, it reads more like a political power play.
Which, going to that, basically, like the last time we got in here and did this roundtable discussion, what it was about funding for CAT, $70,000, medium coke, free speech. If you haven't seen it, you'll remember that phrase.
Give money.
Medium coke to basically finance CAT. Anyways, but the point was there were a couple of people wanting to basically get that job. What was the other organization and who was in that?
Well, there were a couple of different proposals. One was the Ozark Film Festival, and
Oh, would that be the same film festival that didn't actually let any local producers stuff in their festival?
back in 2000, I think there were actually very, very few, and you know, of course, we know a dozen or so producers who fall into that category, and
So the Ozark Film Society basically was one of those organizations.
Yes,
that
and,
wanted to run CAT.
Yeah, and Bob was part of that organization, or he was in on the proposal, I believe.
No, really?
Well, also, I mean, so what was, I've had an experience with the Ozark Film Society. And just very simply, the first year the Ozark Films thing happened, it wasn't the Ozark Film thing, it was the Hard Share. I was real inspired, and it actually got me out to start making videos. And very inspired by it, and I think the people that ran it, the more artistic people, brought a lot to it. Well, the next year it wasn't like that, but I submitted some stuff.
Yeah.
And, unlike most film festivals, most film festivals, film organizations, you submit something, we'll send you an acceptance or rejection slip.
Or at least the how we got it slip.
The how we got it, basically, like, we looked at it, we're not gonna run your stuff because, or we are.
We think you should be dismembered in the street by wild horses or whatever.
That's professionalism.
Right.
I never heard from those people until, like, I saw the article in the newspaper a week before, and my show
was showing,
and it wasn't in there. And basically, I even went so far to write them the following year and said, should I spend my $40 to submit this stuff? Are you going to accept stuff which is basically controversial?
Oh, so what you got then for the $40 the first year translates to bupkis again.
Bupkis again.
It costs you money for them not to talk to you.
Yeah.
Wow, you can do that for free.
And they never, even answered that question. They never even, they said, well, we tried to accept a lot of different stuff, but all the people who submitted, the VDA crowd that actually are from here in Arkansas, Fayetteville, all the people that submitted stuff, and there was like, was it 5 of us, 4 of us?
I don't know, a bunch of us.
Go Gotha, great film.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My stuff.
Gotha in particular kind of kicked things up.
Only movie horror-wise that I've ever seen that actually scared me. Only one. Locally done right around here.
Go. But anyways, so we've got all of those things, right? We've got them, we've got also courtroom productions. All their stuff was rejected. They never got rejection slips. They never got an explanation. They never even told who the judges was and what their qualifications are. These are like standard things in a professional sort of organization.
$40 to be ignored. This is like the equivalent of necrophiliac phone sex. Hey, I'll call you up. Could I pay if you just wouldn't breathe heavy at me?
But my
Just
point
lay
is,
there, okay?
But my point is that basically, and I've seen it the Ozark Film Society, their stuff, and it's like, most of the stuff that was accepted, the ones that were accepted, were basically ones that were about local businesses, or people had spent $23,000 on a film. And are these the people, are these the people that you really want running CAT? I don't think so, because unless you had money or basically made the sort of stuff that they wanted to, that's not community access.
Basically, they did the thing that would be illegal if it were done in community access, which is they're judged by content, whether or not you were allowed to air your stuff in their venue.
And the funny thing is, they have these films that people spend a gazillion dollars on, and not one of them were any better than Golgotha.
Golgotha was a terrific film.
Yeah.
It was rejected. We don't know why it was rejected. They never told us.
Well, anyway, I don't know,
They never told you that it was rejected. They just,
it's more of exclusion.
Might have lost it.
exclusion by omission.
And I don't know,
It's a new one. I think it's called being snubbed or shunned in Southern society.
yeah, I
Good
don't
old-fashioned
know,
shunning.
I don't know how
Prefer to use it as a
much,
paperweight. Anyway.
I don't know how much I really want to bring the hammer down on those folks, but
Well,
I do know that.
I'm just saying.
It's just an interesting coincidence that good old Bob also was involved with them, and sure enough, they were also up as one of the potential considerees for the position that.
And basically, this is the, basically, we're being questioned on content, and so often, from that OFAC group, and I think, wasn't Emengger had said quite a few times, we want to really increase quality over here in the cable access station, and I right on.
Yeah, well, who knows what that means? It's like we've gone over the debate about
It
quality.
needs to be more professional, yet this organization does not reflect professionalism in the traditional sense of what you would think like in a professionalism like a business and the way people interact and respond.
But as far as efficiency and quality of work delivered and working conditions and time of, how long it takes and, basically amount of product put out for man hours spent, I would say that this runs with all the efficiency of, oh, it's like frightening. We run with all the efficiency of a hostile corporate takeover of somebody else's society. Yay us.
Let me check this thing.
Being anti-Christ.
Okay.
But I want to kind of loop it, but I want to kind of loop that whole subject back to the beginning. And a lot of what I'm saying here is the going feeling with this complaint and with this phantom group of people who would probably be behind the complaint and whatnot was, it's like public access is a great idea on paper, but it would be so much better if we could just keep the darn public out of it.
Right. I mean, you know, if you build a little gate around it and, you know, like you do your neighborhoods and, you know, a little card that if you stick it in there and the person, then it checks into the bank, and if they make under $35,000 a year, you know, security comes along and takes it away.
And that's them with taste.